many of you know that the first shot in the First World War was fired by a soldier from my country of heritage, Ghana? The events of the global warfare of the last 100 years have affected us all. Personally, I wear a poppy to remember the suffering and sacrifice that so many of our loved ones and compatriots endured. But this should be a matter of choice. In my lifetime, I've noticed slow and gradual poppy tyranny, which should be a contradiction in terms. Those who don't embrace the poppy get bullied, harassed, and labelled unpatriotic. Everybody from TV presenters and footballers to ordinary people in the street therefore feel they have to wear one. This is robbing the poppy of its meaning. How can you tell if someone is wearing one through conscience or because they feel they have to? And that's not what people died for, so that their memory would become a weapon in itself. The poppy was, after all, intended to be a symbol of freedom and peace. This year, I hope people will choose to remember the wars of the past and hope for future peace. But wearing a poppy should be a choice.
It's like religion, isn't it? Once something is enforced by law, it doesn't become about the devotion to the thing. It doesn't become voluntary anymore. And I think it's important that people often accuse those on the left wing of being virtue signallers. But this is a kind of virtue signalling that's coming from some people who consider themselves patriots. And I think it's important. I notice we're all wearing poppies. It's important it's voluntary because that means we had dedicated a thought to those who lost their lives in one of the most significant moments in our history. So I agree entirely with what you said. I just wanted to move the conversation slightly to a related topic, and that is this thing called white poppy that has come out, and it's apparently by this pacifist organisation. And I've got a few concerns. I believe in peace, obviously, but I've got a few concerns with it. And one is there's a danger it juxtaposes the actual traditional red poppy as being against peace, as being for war, when actually this was a war to keep the peace. Yeah. And that's important to remember. I think also, if they were to do this, I'm concerned they launched it at the same time, and their appeal is during the same time as the poppy appeal. And so it's in competition with the red poppy. They could have dedicated another week to it during the year. And thirdly, the funds, the money. This and all the money we give to this goes to the veterans. But the white poppy's money goes to their own organisation, which is a pacifist organisation, and they use that to teach children in school that war is always wrong. I don't believe that. If I was alive when Hitler were alive, I would have volunteered, and you'd find me over there trying to defeat the Nazis. War isn't always wrong. Sometimes war is just, and it's needed to keep the peace.
So we've got to remember what this is all about. And we are still in the midst of the centenary of remembering and commemorating the First World War, where, you know, the sacrifices were made. People that you mentioned about the first shot being fired. For 6 years, I chaired the committee of the memorial gates next to Buckingham Palace, and that is to remember the service and sacrifice of the 5 million who served from South Asia, the Indian subcontinent, which is now India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, from Africa and the Caribbean. 5 million people served as volunteers. Over 1 million Indians alone in the First World War. And, you know, they weren't allowed to become officers unless they were doctors. And this is to remember their service and sacrifice. You know, there are 1 or 2 years since the Second World War where the British Army has not been in active service. I mean, the Afghanistan war, if you want to call it that, was longer than the First and Second World Wars put together. So this is for our service people. This is, I mean, and they serve us. I mean, they call it the services, they serve us. And this is to remember what they do, remember their daily service, their daily sacrifice, and to remember war. And it is about peace, and it is about the welfare. The money from this, millions of pounds a year, goes from the poppy appeal for the welfare of our armed forces and our veterans. And I think it's wonderful that this country does it. And of course, people do it out of choice. No one can force anyone to do this, but it's wonderful what this country does.
No one should shame anyone out of not doing it.
On that note, sorry, just before you guys come in, can I just read you something from Jon Snow, the TV presenter, because he is one of the people who has come under a lot of pressure for not wearing a poppy. And this is the reason that he's given for doing it. He says, I'm begged to wear an AIDS ribbon, a breast cancer ribbon, a Marie Curie flower, you name it, from the Red Cross to the RNIB. They send me stuff to wear to raise awareness, and I don't. And in those terms, and on those terms alone, I do not and will not wear a poppy. I just raise that because there definitely is this current that you are expected to wear one. And I think it sounds like, well, so far, those of you who've spoken agree that it should be a matter of conscience. That's the whole point, that we actually have an act of remembrance.
I disagree with that sentiment that he's saying, because I think that actually, so for example, when I had children, I will be making sure my children wear poppies. They will not be allowed to not wear one, because I see it as the ultimate sign of respect for people whose life have been taken or deeply affected by the service and the sacrifice that they've made to allow us the life that we lead today. And I feel very strongly about that. And when he quotes things like breast cancer ribbons or AIDS wristbands or all the other things, actually, those things are tragic illnesses and problems and all the rest. I'm not undermining that. But actually, every single one of us is blessed to live as free as we do because, in lots of ways, of the sacrifice that people have made. It's not the same, breast cancer and all the rest of it, that's terrible. But for me, I don't see the two things on the same level.
And we wouldn't be having this conversation around this table in the way that we are without their service and sacrifice.
Well, there's another angle to this, and this is somebody who tweeted about the poppy being co-opted by politicians in the war on terror. Let's have a look at the tweet. It's an interesting perspective. I wouldn't... Harry Leslie Smith says, I'm against wearing of the poppy because it's been co-opted in the war on terror and eroding democracy. I wouldn't go that far to say that means we shouldn't wear the poppy. I think this is another side to the politicisation of the debate, and actually the truth is the poppy should remain apolitical. It's as you've correctly said, it's to remember the sacrifice of our troops, and they don't make the decisions where they are deployed. They don't get to make the decision to go into Iraq or into Afghanistan. It's the soldier's job to serve. It's not the soldier's job to decide where war is launched. And I always oppose the Iraq war.
Willing to make the ultimate sacrifice on our behalf.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carol?
It's a very emotional time for me in the lead up to Remembrance Day. It's really simple for me. I'm like you, there's no choice for me. I wear it out of pride and gratitude and respect and regret. And it really hacks me up when people like Jon Snow bring his principles, his thoughts, his beliefs into this. We don't care what he thinks or believes. This is about honouring the people who died for this country. It's very simple. The men who went to war, their beliefs didn't matter, what they thought didn't count. They were conscripted and they went to fight for the country, and that's what they did. And this is a time to just respect them. It's not a time to question what they did, to question the folly of war, to talk about the commitment to peace. We all know that. This is the one time in the year that we actually get to remember and to thank them, and we should just get on and do that. There's this lovely old guy here called Ron Jones. He's on screen. He's 100 years old. Ron is an Auschwitz survivor, and every year for the past 30 years, he sells poppies in his local supermarket. That's how much it means to him. That's how much he cares. And people like Jon Snow ought to wear. I'm very suspicious of people who don't wear poppies. I don't like them for the reason that I don't think they appreciate. I don't think they have gratitude.
But John's not saying that he doesn't remember, but he's just saying that he doesn't choose to express his remembrance in that way. I mean, isn't that the point? That if everyone feels that they have to wear it, then it loses its meaning.
They shouldn't feel they have to. They should feel they should wear it.
But you can't tell people how they should feel. It has to come from them. That's the point.
They should still feel that they should wear it.